She thought today would be just another shift behind the register. Another day swallowing insults just to keep her job. But when her supervisor humiliated her in front of customers, louder than necessary, crueler than usual, she kept her head down, convinced no one would step in for someone like her. What she didn't see was the man standing at the end of the aisle, a man nobody expected in a supermarket, a man whose presence froze the entire staff mid-breath. And before anyone understood what was happening, he said her real name, the one no one here knew. That was the moment everything changed. Everyone in this supermarket thinks she's just Maria from Checkout 3. They snap their fingers when the line is slow, laugh at her accent when they think she can't hear, and joke that she should be grateful to have a job at all. Today, her supervisor is about to humiliate her loud enough for the whole store to enjoy. What nobody knows is that the man in the black suit at the end of the aisle didn't come here to shop. He came here looking for one particular girl, and the first word he'll say in this story is her real name. The beeping of the scanner had its own rhythm, a steady electronic heartbeat that usually helped Anna stay calm. Item, beep, bag, slide, have a nice day, smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Over and over until her feet numbed and her thoughts drifted somewhere far beyond the fluorescent lights and sticky floor tiles. But this afternoon, the rhythm broke. The cereal box in her hand wouldn't scan. She ran the barcode over the red laser once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. The line behind the customer stretched halfway down the aisle, and Anna could already feel the weight of their impatience piling onto her shoulders. Of course, the woman in front of her muttered, rolling her eyes. Always the same thing with you people. Anna pretended not to hear, fingers moving quickly to type the numbers manually. The keypad blurred for a second. She blinked the sting from her eyes and tried to focus. 2, 3, 7, 8. Maria. The shout landed like a slap across the back of her neck. She flinched before she could stop herself. Only one person in the store said her name like that. Loud, flat, as if it tasted bad. Her name wasn't even Maria. She turned to see Mr. Daniels already storming toward her from the end of the aisle. Vest unbuttoned, tie crooked, anger announced in every hurried step. He didn't walk so much as charge, one hand already lifted to point at her like a weapon. How many times do I have to tell you? He barked, loud enough that heads turned in frozen food and produce. You're holding up the line again. Anna opened her mouth, the explanation ready on her tongue. The code isn't... Excuses, he snapped, cutting her off. His finger jabbed the air an inch from her face. This is basic. Basico, okay? Even you should be able to handle a cereal box. A couple of teenagers in hoodies snickered from halfway down the line. The woman with the cereal smirked, suddenly vindicated. Anna felt the heat crawl up her neck, burning the tips of her ears. She kept her gaze glued to the scanner, because she knew if she met anyone's eyes, the shame would spill over. My name is Anna, she said quietly. It slipped out before she could stop it, soft and small and useless. What? Daniels barked. She swallowed. It's Anna, not Maria. A beat of silence, then a short, sharp laugh. Look at this, he said, turning to the customers as if they were his audience. Now she wants to correct me. Now she cares about details. He smacked a hand against the plastic edge of her register. Your badge says Maria. He jabbed at it with his finger. Maria is what corporate printed. That's what you were here. The badge did say Maria. It had since her first week when someone in HR typed her name wrong and never bothered to fix it. The manager who trained her had shrugged. You want the job or not? So she'd kept it. Quietly. Like she kept everything. The line shuffled, people shifting from one foot to another. Irritation buzzed in the air, sharp and electric. A little boy in a Spider-Man t-shirt stared up at Daniels with wide eyes. His mother pulled him closer, lips pressed in a thin line. No one said anything. Anna's fingers tightened around the cereal box until the cardboard bent under the pressure. I'm sorry, she managed. I'll go faster. You'll go right, not faster, Daniel said. He leaned closer, voice dropping half an octave but not in volume. We're not running a charity. People don't come here to wait while you punch in codes like it's rocket science. If you can't keep up, there are 10 others who'd be happy to stand where you are. He straightened, turning to the customers again with a wide, empty smile. Folks, we apologize for the delay. Our cashier is still getting the hang of things. You know how it is. Anna had been here almost 2 years. She typed the rest of the code with shaking hands, willing her fingers not to slip. The cereal finally registered with a loud, mocking beep. She slid it into the bag and moved to the next item, breath coming shallow and fast. Behind her, Daniels didn't leave. "You see this?" he said to one of the stock boys stacking chips nearby. "This is why we can't promote from the front. No initiative, no urgency." His tone shifted from mocking to something more cutting as he spoke, and he didn't bother lowering his voice. "But hey, we have diversity, right? Corporate loves that." The word landed on Anna's skin like something sticky and cheap. The stock boy, Diego, froze mid-stack. His eyes flicked to Anna, then back to Daniels. He didn't say anything. Anna didn't blame him. She'd learned the same lesson. Survival meant silence. "You can go back to work, Diego," Daniels said. "I'll handle checkout 3. He stepped closer, invading Anna's small rectangle of space behind the register. The smell of his cologne, too strong, too bitter, mixed with the plastic and cleaning products. He reached past her to tap on the screen, fingers moving fast. "See?" he said, his mouth twisting into a smirk. "Not that hard when you actually pay attention." Anna felt her face burning. The customers watched everything, her mistakes, his scolding, the way she kept her shoulders tight and her head down. Every part of her wanted to disappear into the floor, to be anywhere but under these fluorescent lights with this man using her as a performance. "Next," Daniels called, louder than necessary. The line shuffled forward. The scanner beeped. The world moved on, but something in Anna stayed stuck in that minute where he turned her into a joke. "Maybe if you spent less time daydreaming and more time learning the codes," he muttered under his breath, but loud enough for the woman with the cereal to hear. The woman smirked again. Anna swallowed hard, forcing air in and out. She wanted to scream that she knew the codes, that she could type them blindfolded, that she was the one they called when the price tags didn't match, that she stayed late to help close when others faked emergencies, that she sent money home every week, that she'd crossed a desert and a border and 1,000 other dangers just to stand here being told she was replaceable. Instead, she said nothing. Her hands moved. Milk, beep. Bread, beep. Apples, beep. Plastic bags rustled, change clinked, receipts printed with their indifferent little whir. She worked as if her body belonged to someone else. 3 lanes down, someone's phone started playing a video loudly. Laughter erupted. A teenager joked that Anna needed Wi-Fi to work the machine. Someone else called out, "Relax, at least she's pretty." The comments floated over her like trash in a river. She kept going. From somewhere behind her, the automatic doors sighed open. Usually, she didn't even notice that sound. Customers came and went in a constant stream. Moms with carts full of snacks, construction workers grabbing dinner, elderly couples counting coins, kids begging for candy they'd never get. But this time, something about the air changed. It wasn't colder, but it felt sharper. Anna's gaze, fixed on the conveyor belt, didn't move. She didn't turn around. But her body noticed. The slight hush in conversations, the way Diego stopped mid-step with the chip boxes, the way one of the assistant managers straightened her vest and smoothed her hair, like she'd just realized she was being watched. Daniels noticed too. She felt it in the way he pivoted, shoulders squaring, voice suddenly bright. "Good afternoon, sir," he called out, tone sliding into the polished friendliness he reserved for whoever looked rich enough to complain to corporate. Anna finished ringing up the last item in front of her and risked a glance toward the entrance. The first thing she saw was the hat, a tall black top hat, the kind nobody wore outside of old movies and costume parties. Under it, a face lined with age and experience, beard neatly trimmed, eyes the color of cold water. The man wearing it moved down the main aisle not like he was shopping, but like he was inspecting something that already belonged to him. He didn't carry a basket or push a cart. His hands rested lightly on the head of a dark walking cane, though he didn't seem to lean on it. His suit was black, perfectly cut, with a golden waistcoat that caught every bit of fluorescent light and made it look almost warm. He looked wildly out of place between shelves of canned soup and discounted cereal, and somehow, he looked like the only thing that belonged there. Conversations faded one by one as he passed. Staff straightened. Customers who'd been complaining about prices suddenly remembered manners. Even the overhead music, mindless pop, sounded tinny and embarrassed in his presence. "Can I help you find something, sir?" Daniels asked, stepping out from behind Anna's register as if he'd been welcoming important guests all day. The man's gaze swept the store, slow and deliberate. It passed over the produce section, the bakery, the line of checkouts. It almost moved past Anna's lane. And then it stopped. For an instant, Anna thought she was imagining it. The way his eyes narrowed just a fraction. The way his chin lifted half an inch like someone recognizing a detail they'd been searching for. "Sir?" Daniels repeated, smile widening. The man in the hat didn't answer him. He stepped closer, cane tapping once against the tile. The sound was soft, but somehow carried all the way to the end of the aisle. Customers shifted aside without being asked, creating a clear path from the front doors to checkout 3. To her, Anna's pulse doubled. She dropped her gaze back to the scanner quickly, cheeks flushing with fresh embarrassment. The last thing she needed was another reason for Daniels to accuse her of not focusing. "Next," she murmured, voice smaller than usual. Nobody stepped forward. She looked up again. The line in front of her had melted sideways. People moved out of the way, leaving a stretch of empty tile between her register and the man in the gold waistcoat. He stopped just beyond arm's reach, close enough that Anna could see the precise knot of his tie, the faint pattern woven into the fabric of his vest. Daniels was at his side in an instant, his hand hovering near the older man's elbow like he might guide him. "We're happy to have you here, sir. If you're looking for our premium items, we keep them on the..." The man lifted one gloved hand, palm outward. Daniels fell silent mid-sentence, words cut clean. Those pale eyes, sharp and assessing, stayed fixed on Anna. She swallowed. The entire store seemed to shrink until it was just the 3 of them at the front of the checkout lanes. The girl with the wrong name on her badge, the supervisor still half-turned toward his interrupted performance, and the stranger who'd walked in like a storm dressed as a gentleman. Up close, the man's face was a map of small lines, around his mouth, at the corners of his eyes, across his brow. Not soft lines, lines carved by decisions and late nights and too many numbers in too many ledgers. But his gaze, for all its intensity, wasn't cruel. It was measuring. Anna straightened without meaning to, shoulders pulling back, chin lifting half an inch. Her fingers, still resting on the edge of the register, uncurled slightly. The man took one more step forward. The overhead lights reflected in his eyes, turning the pale blue almost silver. He spoke, and his voice was steady, resonant, carrying to every corner of the store without needing to rise. "Good afternoon," he said, not to Daniels, not to the room at large, but directly to the girl behind the register that still read, "Maria, Señorita Ana Lucia Herrera." Anna didn't move. For a full second, she couldn't even process the sound of her own name, her real name, spilling from the lips of a stranger dressed like he had stepped out of a different century. The register screen glowed in front of her, an island of numbers and barcodes. The entire supermarket seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in aisle 7, a jar slipped from someone's hand and hit the floor with a muffled thud, but no one reacted. Every pair of eyes was on Anna, and the man who spoke her full name like a private truth. She felt her heart knock against her ribs, a sharp, startled beat. Her full name didn't exist here. Not in HR, not in payroll, not even in the apartment she rented with 3 other women who called her Lucy because it sounded faster. The only place her full name lived was in a folder back home, wrapped in a little piece of cloth patterned with yellow flowers. To hear it here now, from him, it was impossible. Daniels blinked hard, stunned for the first time in the 2 years Anna had known him. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no sound came out. His face shifted rapidly through expressions. Confusion, annoyance, calculation. None of them landed. "Sir," he finally managed, stepping closer to the man. "If you need assistance, I can..." "You can step aside," the man said without looking at him. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They carried the quiet authority of someone used to giving orders that turned into laws the moment they left his mouth. Several customers took an instinctive step back. Even the assistant manager near the self-checkout froze with her hand hovering over a malfunctioning touchscreen. Anna's breath trembled as she forced her voice out. How do you know my name? The man studied her with that same measuring gaze, as though he were not seeing her but rediscovering her. Because it's yours, he answered simply, and because I have been looking for you. The words struck her like cold water. Looking for her? Her stomach tightened instinctively, a fear with no shape or reason rising in her throat. In her life, being found was rarely good news. People with power rarely searched for girls like her unless they needed something, or unless they wanted to take something away. Daniels suddenly found his voice again. Sir, this is a place of business. You can't just walk in here and… The man turned his head, slow and precise. What did you call her a moment ago? The air thinned. Daniels paled. I was addressing my employee, incorrectly. The man tilted his head the slightest degree. You called her Maria. Daniels stiffened, shifting defensively. That's what her badge says. She is not a badge. The man's eyes sharpened. She is Ana Lucia Herrera, and you will not speak to her again as if she is anything less. A ripple went through the staff. The assistant manager's jaw dropped. Diego stared openly, one arm still braced against the chip display. Even the teenagers hovering near the gum rack forgot their snickers, instinctively recognizing the tone of someone whose influence stretched far beyond these aisles. Ana felt her knees soften. Not in weakness, but in disbelief. No one here uses my full name, she whispered. Then they have been addressing the wrong person, the man said. Daniels let out a dry, humorless laugh. Look, sir, I don't know who you think she is, but she's a cashier. We have policies. The man's eyebrow lifted. What is your name? Daniels stuttered. James Daniels, store supervisor. Supervisor. The man tasted the word, not with disdain, but with a kind of clinical interest. Mr. Daniels, do you know who owns this supermarket? Daniels straightened reflexively. Corporate, Evergrocer Holdings, same as all the others. Correct. The man nodded once. And do you know who owns Evergrocer Holdings? Silence rushed in. Daniels swallowed. I don't follow. You don't have to. The man's tone didn't change, but something in the room did. The fluorescent light seemed to dim around the edges, as if the building itself understood the shift. Anna's breath caught. She understood now why the room had gone still when he walked in, why the staff straightened, why the customers fell silent. He wasn't just a wealthy man in a waistcoat. He was the reason this store existed. The man finally looked away from Daniels and turned back to Anna. His gaze softened, not with familiarity but with intention, like he had chosen her before she ever knew she was being chosen. Ana Lucia, he said gently. Her throat tightened. It had been years, since anyone said her name like that, full and round, without rushing it or flattening it or turning it into something easier to swallow. Yes, she managed. He placed one gloved hand on the handle of his cane. I came here to speak with you. Daniels blinked hard. With her? Why? The man didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, just one quiet step, until Anna could see the faint silver threading along the brim of his gloves. His presence carried warmth despite the cold autumn air he'd walked through. His voice softened low enough that it felt meant only for her. You don't belong behind this register, he said, and someone in your life knew that long before today. Anna felt the floor shift beneath her feet as if the supermarket tiles weren't solid anymore. What do you mean? She whispered. The man's expression didn't change, but his next words did. I knew your father. Anna's breath broke. Her fingers slipped from the edge of the register, and for the first time since the day she arrived in this country, she felt the ground tilt in a way that had nothing to do with exhaustion or fear, and everything to do with something she never expected. A past she thought was gone had just walked straight into her present. Anna's breath caught somewhere between her ribs and her throat. The man's words, I knew your father, didn't fit inside the fluorescent-lit aisles of a supermarket where the floor smelled faintly of cleaning solution and spilled juice. They felt too heavy, too sacred, to share space with discount cereal and customers shifting restlessly in lines. For a heartbeat, nothing inside her moved. Not her breath, not her voice, not the familiar rhythm of survival that usually kept her steady. You, her voice splintered. You must be mistaken. But the man didn't blink. His gaze stayed anchored to hers, steady as a held truth. "Your father was Ignacio Herrera," he said, softly but with unshakable certainty. "He walked with a slight limp in his left leg from a ladder accident years before. He hummed old ranchero songs when he worked, not because he liked them but because your mother did. On Thursdays, he saved his lunch so you could have an extra snack for school on Fridays." Anna felt her skin prickle. Those details weren't just correct. They were private, buried in a part of her life she had never shared here. The limp, the humming, the lunches, small memories she carried like warm stones in her pocket. Her fingers curled tighter around the register's edge. "That was my father," she whispered. "But he died when I was little." The man nodded once, almost respectfully. "I know. I was there that night." Anna's vision thinned at the edges like the world was narrowing into a tunnel connecting only her and him. There that night? Why? How? Before he could answer, Daniel stepped forward, hands raised, voice sharp with false authority. "Okay, that's enough, sir. I'm asking you to leave the employee area and respect the environment. If this is personal business, you can wait outside for—" "Mr. Daniels," the man interrupted, not turning. Silence. The request wasn't loud, but it reverberated through the supermarket like a command issued by someone accustomed to obedience. Daniels froze mid-step. It was the first time Anna had ever seen him look lost. The customers kept watching, pretending they weren't, but failing. A woman clutched pretzels against her chest. A boy in a soccer jersey bit the corner of his receipt. Even the assistant manager near self-checkout hovered over her screen as if anchored there by invisible wire. The Tycoon, because that was clearly what he was, a man carved out of old money and older authority, shifted his cane lightly, grounding himself before he continued. "Your father worked for me," he said. Anna blinked. "For you?" "Yes." His gaze lowered for the first time, not in shame but in memory, years before the company you now know existed. Back when everything was still small, local, messy. He exhaled. Before the fire, the words scraped something open in her chest. "My mother told me it was an accident," Anna murmured. "Faulty wiring, no one to blame." The man lifted his eyes. "There was blame, Miss Herrera. Whether your father would want me to say that aloud is another matter." He paused, measuring the weight of the sentence. "It was a warehouse we used to rent. The wiring was old, the structure older. It wasn't supposed to be occupied after hours. And yet," Anna closed her eyes. She could almost smell smoke. Memory or imagination? She didn't know. "He saved lives that night," the man continued. 5 workers were locked in. He got 3 out himself. The 4th stumbled out behind him. He went back for the 5th. Her throat tightened so violently she had to swallow twice. "Mama never told me that. She wouldn't have wanted you to carry it," he said gently. "Loss is heavy enough without heroism added on top." Anna stared at his shoes, polished black leather reflecting the overhead lights, and tried to breathe around the sudden ache rising through her. If he died for someone, why didn't they ever come forward? Why didn't anyone say something? The man hesitated. His eyelids lowered as if bracing against an old unwelcome truth. Some did. But systems swallow stories, files get closed, names get lost. And men like me, he drew a slow breath. We bury the things that hurt. Anna's gaze rose slowly back to his. "You buried him?" "I buried my mistake," he corrected quietly. "Your father shouldn't have been working that night. He offered to take another man's shift because he said he needed the money. I approved it. I should have said no. I could have said no." A long silence stretched, taut. "He was there because I didn't make the right choice, and I have lived with that truth every day since." Anna's chest felt too small to hold everything swelling inside it. Grief, disbelief, confusion, anger. The ground under her feet seemed to tilt again. "Why come now?" she asked. "Why find me here?" His eyes softened. "Because I promised him." The world stilled. "Promised him what?" she whispered. The man's gaze warmed in a way that unsettled her. Because it wasn't pity. It wasn't guilt. It was something older, deeper, almost reverent. "To look after you." The tile beneath her felt suddenly unstable. "Look after me? I don't understand. I've been here 2 years. Nobody." "I searched for you," he said. "But after your father's death, your family moved. Records were incomplete. Your mother changed her last name. Then you crossed the border. Then you came here. His jaw tightened minutely. I found fragments, a trail of places you passed through. But not you. Not until last month. Last month? Anna's heart gave a sudden, anxious flutter. Why last month? The man reached into his coat and withdrew a small envelope. Thin, white, folded at the corners from handling. He held it delicately, as though it contained something fragile. A clerk in our payroll auditing department flagged your employee file, he said. A misprinted badge. An incorrect social security number on your first week. A wage adjustment that should have been corrected but wasn't. His voice lowered. That name, your name, stood out. Anna stared. Her misprinted badge. The thing she'd grown used to. The thing she'd swallowed quietly. The way she swallowed everything. You saw my file. I saw your name, he corrected. And when I saw it, I knew. Knew what? That she was the daughter of a man who died because of his company? That she was a ghost he'd been chasing through administrative paperwork? Her pulse thrummed fiercely. You could have called me, she said. I didn't want to call. He stepped closer. Not threateningly, carefully, with intention. I wanted to look you in the eyes the first time I spoke your real name. The sentence slid through her like something luminous and destabilizing. It felt too intimate, too large, too heavy to stand in the cereal aisle. Behind them, Daniel suddenly found his voice again. Sir, none of this changes protocol. She's an employee. I am her supervisor. You can't interfere with... The Tycoon turned, eyes narrowing. Mr. Daniels, are you aware that Evergrocer Holdings, the company that signs your paychecks, is owned by my family? Daniels paled. And are you further aware, the man continued calmly, that the authority to restructure any store lies directly with me? Daniel's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The Tycoon faced Anna again. What he said to you today is unacceptable. What he has said to you for months is worse. What he has allowed others to say to you, his jaw hardened. That ends now. The assistant manager stepped forward timidly. Sir, I need this store properly supervised, he said. Mr. Daniels is dismissed, effective immediately. A visible shiver rippled through the employees. Someone near aisle 4 dropped a box of pasta. The sound of cardboard hitting tile echoed like a minor explosion. Daniel's face twisted. You can't do that. I already did. You need cause. I have cause, he said flatly. You humiliate staff. You manipulate schedules. You lie on compliance reports. And you created an environment where a woman working 2 jobs under a false name was treated as disposable. His voice deepened. Leave your keys. And leave this building. Daniel stared at him. Then at Anna. Then back again. Rage, fear, disbelief. They all collided in his expression. You're ruining my career over her, he snapped. No, the Tycoon said. You ruined your own career. She is simply the first person who will no longer suffer for it. Daniel stormed off, ripping his lanyard from his neck and slapping it onto the counter near Anna's scanner. The plastic badge bounced once before landing still. The store exhaled, a long, collective breath. Anna's heart was still racing, her fingers trembling against the register. She didn't know whether to be relieved, afraid, or furious that her humiliation had finally been witnessed by someone with enough power to strike it down. What now? She murmured. Now, the man said. You and I talk. Here? Anna looked around. Customers still lingered. Employees still hovered. Everyone pretended to work, but didn't dare look away. No, he said. Not here. The assistant manager raised a tentative hand. We have an office in the back. It's small. It will do, he replied. Diego hurried to replace Anna at the register. He gave her a quick, shaky nod. Part admiration, part shock. As Anna stepped out from behind the counter, the room seemed to shift. Not physically, but in the way people looked at her. Not with pity, not with superiority, with curiosity, with the awareness that she was no longer who she had been 10 minutes ago. The Tycoon followed her, cane tapping softly along the tile. Employees parted for him automatically. Some looked at Anna as though she were stepping across a threshold invisible to everyone but her. At the door to the back hallway, she paused, Her hand hovered over the handle. "If you walk through," the Tycoon said quietly behind her, "your life will not be what it was when you arrived this morning." Anna's breath shuddered once. She opened the door. They stepped inside. The hallway stretched long and dim, humming with old fluorescent bulbs. The office waited at the end, a cramped square room once used for reprimands, warnings, and small humiliations designed to keep employees in line. Anna reached for the doorknob. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, from the unmistakable sense that something long buried, her father's last wish, was finally rising to meet her. She pushed the door open. What waited inside wasn't the conversation she expected, but the one that would alter everything. The office felt smaller the moment Anna stepped inside. She had only been here twice before. Once for a $10 shortage in her drawer. Once when Daniels lectured her about initiative. Back then the room had seemed huge and hostile. Now with the man in the black suit and gold waistcoat closing the door quietly behind them, the air felt dense, crowded with things unsaid. Stale coffee clung to the walls. A fluorescent bulb hummed overhead. The desk was buried in paperwork and a cracked mug that read World's #1 Boss. The plastic nameplate, J. Daniels, store supervisor, sat crooked by the keyboard. Anna hovered by the door for a second, pulse still racing from the scene at the registers. The man removed his hat with a deliberate old-fashioned gesture and set it on the filing cabinet. He pulled Daniel's chair back and sat as if he'd done this 1,000 times in rooms far nicer than this one. Leather creaked softly. "Please," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite. "Sit, Miss Herrera." Her instinct was to stand. Standing meant escape, but her legs felt shaky. She crossed the room and sat, back straight, fingers laced together so he wouldn't see them shake. Up close, his age showed. Silver hair, deep lines around his eyes. A gaze that weighed what it saw. It wasn't kind exactly, but it wasn't dismissive. For the first time that day, she felt looked at rather than looked through. "Do you need water?" he asked. Or a moment. No one here had ever asked her that. "Water is fine," she said. He rose, crossed to the dusty cooler, and filled a paper cup. He handed it to her like it mattered that her hands had stopped trembling. The first sip loosened her throat. "You said you knew my father," she said. "Not just his name." "Why?" He sat again and laced his fingers on the desk. "Because before I was the man who owns this place," he said. "I was the man who approved his shifts. And I approved the one that ended in the fire." The room seemed to tilt. "They told us it was an accident," Anna said. "Faulty wiring. Wrong night. The wiring was bad," he said. "The night was unlucky. But men were there after hours because management wanted overtime covered and didn't want to pay for repairs. Your father stayed late. I signed off on it." Her stomach nodded. "Why tell me that?" "Because the last thing he asked me to do is tied to that choice," he replied. "And because pretending we were both victims of fate would be easier for me and crueler for you." Her fingers creased the cup. "What did he ask?" "In the hospital," the man said. He was burned and furious. I tried to talk about compensation. He grabbed my sleeve and said, "Don't let her be invisible." Then he gave me your full name, Ana Lucia Herrera. He made me repeat it until I said it correctly. Her chest ached. She stared at a stain on the carpet to keep her composure. "I told him I would look after you," the man said. "That I'd give you a chance at something better than loading docks and night shifts." His mouth tightened. "I didn't keep that promise the way I should have." He drew a slim leather folder from his briefcase and set it between them. It looked out of place on the cheap desk. "This is what I did instead," he said. "Open it." Anna flipped it open. On the first page, official letters spelled out, "Beneficiary Compensation Trust, Ignacio Herrera." Below, in neat type, "Beneficiary, Ana Lucia Herrera." Her eyes dropped to the numbers. It wasn't fantasy money, but it was more than she'd ever seen at once. Enough to erase constant panic. Enough to make choices instead of excuses. "This has been sitting somewhere with my name on it?" she asked. "Since the week after the fire," he said. "Your mother refused a direct payment. She said money wouldn't bring him back. I turned it into a trust in your name and told myself that was more respectful." She scanned the margins. Letters returned. Phone calls unanswered. Address no longer valid. Unable to locate beneficiary. File inactive. Unable to locate, she repeated. So you just filed me away. I let other people file you away, he said. I stopped asking whether the promise had actually reached you. Anger rose, heavy and clean. While my mother cleaned offices and I stood at that register, there was money sitting under my name because a rich man got busy. Yes, he said quietly. That's the truth. Why not just fix it now and send me a check? She asked. Why walk into my store and fire my boss and say my full name in front of everyone? Because last month a payroll clerk flagged an employee file, he said. Wrong name on the badge. Partial ID. Notes about strong performance. Your full legal name buried under the mistake. When I read it, it wasn't just another report. It was the same name I'd heard in that hospital. I decided I was done trusting systems to care for you in my place. She shut the folder halfway, then opened it again because not looking felt worse. So what happens now? First, he said, we correct what should have been corrected long ago. The trust is yours. I'll have legal remove the barriers. If you want to take that money and never see me again, you can. I won't follow you or ask for anything. And the version that isn't bare minimum? She asked. He studied her, measuring something beyond her uniform and worn shoes. Your father didn't just want money for you, he said. He wanted you not to disappear into the same machine. For that, a check is lazy. I am offering you another option, not instead of the trust. Beside it, she waited. I run a company from boardrooms where people talk about labor and turnover and experience in abstract, he said. They design policies that look efficient on paper and cruel in practice. They've never stood where you stand. You have. I can teach anyone to read a spreadsheet. I can't teach what it feels like to be called the wrong name for 2 years and have no one care. You want me in those rooms? She asked. In time, he said. Not tomorrow. I'm offering to sponsor your education, classes, a program, whatever fits you. While you study, you work part-time with us in roles that show you how decisions are made. Later, if you want it, full-time work where your perspective matters. If you don't, you walk away with a degree and the trust. And if I say no right now, she pressed, then nothing changes except your options, he said. You still get the trust. You choose whether to stay or leave. I make sure whoever replaces Daniels understands that what I saw on that floor will not be repeated. After that, I stepped back. Why me? She asked. Thousands of people work under your name. Because he asked for you, the man said simply. Because you've survived things my executives read about and forget. And because when I said your full name a few minutes ago, you didn't shrink. You demanded to know how I knew it. People resigned to invisibility don't do that. Her throat burned. She swallowed it down. Her thumb brushed the folder's inner pocket, dislodging a smaller envelope. The paper was worn, the edges soft. Her name curved across the front in uneven, familiar script. The breath left her body. This is his, she whispered. Yes, the man said. He dictated most of it to me. Then he insisted on writing the last part himself. I have carried it ever since. Anna turned the envelope carefully. It was so light it hardly seemed real, yet it pulled at her like gravity. You should read it when you're alone, he said. Or burn it. That choice is yours too. Outside the thin door, a cart rattled past and a scanner beeped. Her old life kept running. Checkout codes, closing shifts, rent due on the 1st. How long do I have, Guy? She asked. I fly back in 2 days, he said. By then I need to know if you want only what was already yours. His gaze flicked to the folder. Or if you want me to open the other door as well. 2 days. 48 hours to decide whether survival was enough or whether she could risk aiming for something larger than keeping the lights on. Anna slipped the envelope into the pocket of her apron, near the badge that still said Maria. The cheap plastic pressed against one side of her chest, the thin paper pressed against the other. She didn't have her answer yet. But sitting in the ugly office that had once been only a place of scolding and now felt like a crossroads, she knew one thing with sudden clarity. Whatever she chose when she walked back out, she would not be returning to the life where other people decided who she was. The hallway felt different when Anna stepped out of the office. Not bigger, not smaller, just altered, as if the air itself had shifted in density, carrying the weight of a truth she hadn't asked for and wasn't sure she was ready to hold. The thin carpet muffled her steps, but she felt every movement as though she was walking through a tunnel between two versions of herself. The one she had been when she came in, and the one she wasn't sure she recognized now. Behind her, the door closed with a soft click. It sounded almost ceremonial. The supermarket noise returned at once. Carts rattling, a baby fussing near produce, someone complaining about the price of detergent. Life outside the office had continued, unbothered by the fact that Anna's world had flipped itself inside out. The man followed a few steps behind her. His cane tapped lightly, steady, calm, a sound that didn't belong in fluorescent-lit grocery aisles but somehow grounded everything anyway. When they reached the end of the hallway, Anna stopped. Her hand hovered over the door that led back onto the sales floor. "You don't have to go out there right away," he said behind her. "If you need a minute." She shook her head reflexively. "People have shifts. Customers are waiting. I can't hide." "You're not hiding," he said. "You're processing." Those are not the same thing, but Anna pushed the door open anyway. Hiding felt like a luxury she'd never been allowed. The brightness of the store hit her first, the harsh fluorescent glare she had grown used to over months of long hours. The second thing was the silence. People pretended to shop, to browse, to push carts, but their eyes flicked toward her the moment the door swung open. Anna's skin prickled under the weight of the attention. Diego, working at the register next to hers, saw her and straightened. His face softened into a cautious, almost proud smile. She returned it faintly. It felt like the smallest lifeboat in a chaotic sea. The man stepped beside her, posture straight, attention alert. He seemed somehow untouched by the awkward stares, the cheap ceiling lights, the cluttered displays of discount snacks, as though nothing in the room had enough gravity to disturb him. Except her. "If you want to go home, I'll authorize it," he said quietly. "You'll be paid for the full shift." Anna blinked. A paid early dismissal? The idea was so foreign she didn't know how to react. "I should tell Leslie," she murmured. "If I leave during a shift, she'll need—" "She already knows," he said. "She'll cover things until we bring in someone more permanent." He didn't say, "until we replace Daniels," but the words hung unspoken between them. Anna took a few steps toward the front entrance. Every pair of eyes followed her movement, pretending not to. It wasn't cruel attention, not like earlier, but curiosity, shock, speculation. A girl who had been invisible suddenly wasn't. She didn't like the feeling. "You said my father asked you to look after me," she said, still facing forward. "Yes. But you didn't. Not until today." "No," he admitted. "I didn't." "Why?" He exhaled, slow and tired. "Because I let other priorities bury the promise. And because I convinced myself that the system would do what I intended. I was wrong on both counts." Anna turned slightly, not enough to face him fully. "Do you feel guilty about what happened to him?" A long silence followed. He didn't hide from it. "Guilt doesn't begin to cover it," he said. "Your father carried the weight of decisions I made. He paid for risks I took, and he trusted me at the end in a way I didn't deserve." Anna looked down, unable to hold his gaze. Her fingers brushed the envelope in her apron pocket. The paper felt fragile, like it held something alive. Behind her, someone cleared their throat. She turned. Leslie was rushing toward them, cheeks flushed, clutching a clipboard like a shield. Sorry, she blurted. "Miss Herrera? Anna? I needed to catch you before you left." Anna tensed. "Is something wrong?" "Yes," Leslie said, breathless. "And you need to see it." She handed Anna a sheet of paper. It was photocopied, creased, the ink slightly smudged. But the title was unmistakable. Employee Performance Evaluation. Recommendation for Termination. Anna stared at it, not understanding. Leslie pointed to the comments section. "He filed this 2 months ago. I only found it because I'm trying to finish his pending reports before someone from district comes tomorrow." Anna read. "Recurrent errors. Poor initiative, disruptive attitude, unsuitable for customer-facing roles." Her breath tightened. This isn't true," she said. "None of this is true." "I know," Leslie said. "Everyone knows. You train the new hires. You cover shifts. You've never been written up once, and look here." She flipped the page. Recommendation: terminate at next review cycle. Anna's stomach twisted. So while she was working herself raw, while she was swallowing insults, while she was sending money home, Daniels had been quietly sharpening the knife. The man beside her didn't move, but the air around him seemed to shift, cooler, sharper, as if the temperature had dropped a few degrees. "He planned to fire you," he said, voice low. "I knew something was wrong," Leslie said. "The way he talked to you, the way he hovered, the way he avoided giving you a raise even when we needed people." She shook her head, furious. "I wanted you to know, before you left." Anna closed her eyes tightly for a second. The inside of her chest felt scraped clean. So that was the truth under everything. She hadn't been surviving here. She'd been one signature away from losing everything. "Thank you," she whispered to Leslie. Leslie squeezed her arm gently. "Don't let this define you." He was the problem. "Not you." Anna nodded, though she wasn't sure whether the gesture was for Leslie or to steady herself. She folded the paper and handed it back. "I need to go home." "Of course," Leslie said quickly. "Do you want someone to walk you out?" "I'll be fine." The man stepped closer. "I can arrange a car." "No." Anna's voice surprised even her. "I'll take the bus." He studied her for a moment, then nodded once. "As you wish." She walked toward the sliding glass doors. The automatic sensors hummed softly as they parted. A cold breeze rushed in, stinging her cheeks. The sky outside was gray, clouds thick, heavy, almost metallic in their weight. As she stepped out into the parking lot, she felt the envelope shift in her pocket. She touched it gently, tracing the edges. Her father's handwriting rested inside. A voice she hadn't heard in years. A piece of him she thought was gone forever. The bus stop sat at the edge of the lot, a metal bench beside a flickering lamppost. She sat down and let the cold seep through her jeans. Cars passed. A gust of wind stirred wrappers near the curb. A shopping cart clanged somewhere behind her. She finally pulled the envelope out. Her name curved across the front, Ana Lucia Herrera, in the handwriting of the man who used to tuck her hair behind her ear before school. She held it tightly, but she didn't open it. Not yet. The world around her blurred slightly, not from tears, but from the rush of everything she now carried. Her father's last words, a trust she never knew existed, an offer she didn't trust yet but couldn't ignore, the knowledge that she'd been a target in her own workplace. The bus approached down the road, headlights blinking through thin lines of mist. One raindrop landed on the envelope, then another. Anna pressed it to her chest, protecting it. She stood as the bus hissed to a stop, doors folding open like a small invitation. For the first time since the man walked into the supermarket, she felt something stirring beneath the fear, beneath the shock, beneath the exhaustion. Possibility. She stepped onto the bus. The doors closed behind her. Inside the envelope was not only a letter, but a revelation her father had never spoken aloud, and when she read it, nothing in her life would remain the same. The bus smelled like wet coats and cheap cologne. Anna slid into a seat near the middle, away from the flickering overhead light but close enough to the window to see the city sliding past. The envelope sat in her lap, edges slightly curled from the damp. She cupped her hand over it to shield it from the drizzle sneaking in through the old rubber seal around the window. The engine rumbled. The bus lurched forward. Outside, the supermarket shrank in the glass reflection, a fluorescent rectangle in the gray afternoon, the automatic doors still opening and closing as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just learned that her life had been intersecting with a stranger's guilt and her father's last wish for years without her knowing. Her stop was 20 minutes away. She could open the letter here, she thought. Let the words hit her while strangers scrolled on their phones and nodded off against scratched windows. If she burst into tears, no one would ask why. People cried on buses all the time. The city had room for that kind of quiet breakdown. Her fingers traced her name on the envelope again. Not Maria, not Herrera, not some half-mangled variation of who she was. Her full name, the way her father said it when he wanted her attention. Not sharp, not scolding, just present. Ana Lucia. She slid her thumb under the flap. The bus hit a pothole. The jolt snapped through her wrist. The paper resisted, then yielded with a soft rip. Her heart stuttered. She paused, breathing shallowly, the envelope half open. Not here, she decided. Not with gum wrappers on the floor and a stranger snoring 2 seats back. Not with the loudspeaker announcing every cross street like a countdown. Whatever was inside this needed walls, privacy, a place where she could fall apart or not without an audience. She closed the flap again, bent but not ruined, and pressed it flat. Her building was 3 blocks from the bus stop, a squat brown structure with peeling paint and stair railings that rattled. By the time she reached the front door, the drizzle had turned to a thin, steady rain. It soaked the edges of the letter and cooled her skin, but the walk grounded her. Each step up the stairwell was an anchor. 1, 2, 3, second floor landing. The smell of someone frying onions, a TV laughing too loud behind a thin door. Anna's keys jingled in her fingers. Her roommates weren't home yet. The apartment was quiet except for the fridge's tired hum and the occasional creak of the pipes. A lone mug sat in the sink, rim dusted with coffee. On the small table by the window, someone had left a folded grocery ad with red circles around this week's specials, as if the world really could be organized by what was cheaper per pound. She locked the door behind her. For a second, she just stood there, coat still on, envelope in hand, breathing in the ordinary smell of cheap detergent and old linoleum. Her ordinary life crowded in around the edges, trying to reassert itself. Work tomorrow, rent due soon, her mother's next call scheduled for Sunday. None of that had disappeared, but something else had arrived. Anna hung her coat on the back of a chair and sat on the edge of her narrow bed. The envelope lay on the blanket in front of her like a tiny, fragile bomb. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." She opened it slowly this time, careful not to rip the paper more than necessary. Inside was a single sheet, folded twice. The writing was uneven, sometimes cramped, sometimes stretching wide, like the hand that held the pen had been fighting time. The ink had bled a little in places, as if someone had pressed too hard or tears had landed before it dried. At the top, in letters she knew as well as her own reflection, "Mi Ana Lucia, mi Estrella." Her vision blurred. She blinked fast and kept reading. He wrote about small things first. The way she used to sleep with one foot sticking out from the blanket. The way she'd glare at him when he joked about her being too serious. The time she marched into his boss's office at 9 years old and demanded to know why they didn't pay him more when he worked like 3 men. "I was proud," the letter said, the words slanting. "Embarrassed in front of them, yes. But proud. You didn't know what you were up against, but you still walked in with your little chin up." He apologized, too. Not for the fire, not for dying, but for the things he hadn't been able to give her while he was alive. For the piano lessons she wanted. For the birthday he missed because of a double shift. For every time he'd told her to be careful rather than telling her to be bold. "I taught you to survive," he wrote. "I am sorry I didn't always teach you to demand more." Her throat tightened painfully. Halfway down the page, his voice shifted. He mentioned the man in the suit. He didn't describe him as a monster. He didn't let him off the hook either. "He is like a lot of men I've met," the letter said. "Too rich to notice what it costs people like me when he makes a mistake. Too soft in the hands." But something in his eyes that day was different. Not the eyes of a man who sleeps well. I decided to believe him one last time. Not because he deserved it, but because you deserved a chance. He explained the promise, how he had gripped the man's sleeve and made him say her name over and over until he pronounced it properly. How he'd refused to hear about company policy or legal constraints. How he'd said plainly, "If my daughter ever ends up under your roof, you see her, you hear her, you open doors." "I do not ask saints for help," he wrote. "Saints don't run companies like his. I asked a man. Men can break promises, but men can also keep them. If he one day stands in front of you and speaks your name correctly, that means he chose the second thing. Listen, but do not kneel. He is not your patron saint. He is a door." Anna swallowed hard. "He owes us a debt." The letter went on. "Not just money. Money runs out. I asked for a different kind of payment. That he use his power to give you a real choice. If that day comes, hear him. But remember this, Mihija. You owe him nothing that costs you your dignity." The next lines were shakier, the words drifting, the letters larger. "If you receive this, it means 2 things. I am gone, and he did not forget. That means something. I do not know what you will want then. Maybe you will already have a good life. Maybe you will want nothing to do with him. Both are fine. I only want one thing, that you are not invisible. Not to him, not to anyone, not to yourself. Her vision swam now, and she let it. Tears slid down her cheeks and landed on the page, darkening the ink. Near the end, the letter grew simpler. Fewer metaphors, more direct. I know you, he wrote. You will try to carry everything alone. You will think strength means never asking for help. It does not. Strength is knowing when something is too heavy and refusing to let it crush you. Do not let shame sit where your pride should be. You are not a favor. You are not a mistake someone is trying to correct. You are my daughter. Walk into any room remembering that. The last line tilted toward the edge of the paper, as if he had been writing against time. If he gives you a chance, take it or walk away. But do it with your head up. And if you ever forgive me for leaving you, forgive yourself first for everything you think is your fault. None of this is. The signature at the bottom was messy, the J and H barely legible. To Papa, Ignacio. Ana pressed the page to her chest and let herself cry. Not the restrained tears she allowed sometimes in the shower where the water would hide them. Not the tight, silent ones that came on her walk home, when a day had been particularly cruel. These were open, shaking sobs that curled her in on herself and emptied a part of her that had been clenched for years. She cried for the warehouse she'd never seen, for the night of the fire she'd only ever pictured in fragments, for the man who had died carrying someone else out of a building he shouldn't have been in, for the girl who'd crossed a border because survival left no other options, and for the version of herself that had started to believe this narrow life, this wrong name, this constant tiptoe around other people's anger, was the most she could expect. Eventually the sobs softened into hiccups. Her chest still hurt, but the sharp edge had dulled. The rain outside tapped against the window, soft and insistent. She smoothed the letter out gently on the bed. She read the last lines again. He is not your patron saint. He is a door. A door. The trust money. The offer. The education he'd talked about. The work in rooms where people decided how many hours someone like her would stand on hard floors for barely enough pay. It was terrifying. It was infuriating. It was tempting. She imagined saying no, taking the money, disappearing into another city, getting her mother out, finding a cheaper apartment, attending classes at night without owing anyone explanations, living small but safe, untouched by men with canes and gold waistcoats and long memories. She also imagined saying yes, walking into his building, sitting across from him at a table where decisions got made, learning the language of budgets and policies so she could see where people like her were being squeezed, and if she was lucky, loosen some of those screws. She imagined being the person who said, "No, we don't do that," and having it matter. Either path felt like standing at the edge of a rooftop. She folded the letter carefully back into its envelope and slid it under her pillow, as if that would anchor it somewhere close to her while she slept. Sleep, she realized, was laughable right now. She stood, wiped her face with the back of her hand, and crossed to the tiny table by the window. There was a pen near the grocery ad. She flipped the ad over and scribbled on the blank side, hotel name, room number. She didn't know them, but she knew who did. She grabbed her phone. Her fingers hovered over the keypad for a second before she searched the company name plus the city. It took less than a minute to find a brief article about the founder's surprise visit to local stores, complete with a line about him staying at one of our partner hotels a few blocks away. The hotel's name burned on the screen. It wasn't fancy by billionaire standards, but it was a world away from her building. Ana jotted it down, then entered the number into her phone. Her thumb rested on the call button. Her heart hammered. She didn't press it. Not tonight. Instead, she stared at the digits until they blurred, then set the phone face down on the table. The rain outside grew steadier, streaking the glass. Headlights drifted across the walls as cars passed below. Her father's letter lay warm under her pillow. The trust documents were still at the store, waiting in a folder on a cheap desk that no longer belonged to the man who'd tried to erase her. The billionaire with the haunted eyes and polished cane would be in this city for less than 48 more hours. And as Ana stood barefoot on cold linoleum, shirt damp from tears and rain, One simple, terrifying clarity settled in her chest. She wasn't going to him to be rescued. She was going to decide on her own terms what he owed. By the time the sun rose, she would already be on her way to the hotel. Not as a cashier waiting for permission, but as Ignacio Herrera's daughter coming to collect on a debt. Morning came gray but clear. Ana woke before her alarm, the city still half asleep outside her thin window. For a moment she didn't remember why her chest felt tight and light at the same time. Then she felt the envelope under her pillow, the faint crunch of paper, and everything from the day before rushed back in. She lay there a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old pipes knock in the walls. A part of her wanted to stay exactly where she was, to let the 48 hours pass and let the window close on its own. No risk, no new mistakes. Just the same life, but with a little more money somewhere she could finally touch. Then she heard her father's voice from the letter. He is a door. Ana swung her feet to the floor. The hotel looked like it had been designed for people who'd never counted coins at a checkout line. Polished stone floors, high ceilings, soft music that sounded expensive without being memorable. She caught her reflection in one of the brass pillars, hair pulled back neatly, her best blouse smoothed twice on the way over. Eyes too sharp to belong to a guest. She didn't feel like she belonged here. She went anyway. At the front desk, a woman in a navy blazer gave her the practiced, neutral smile reserved for people who might be lost. "Can I help you?" the woman asked. "I'm here to see Mr." Ana said his last name carefully, tasting it the way her father had once made the man taste hers. "He's staying here. He told me to come." The woman's expression flickered. She typed something, paused. Her posture changed almost imperceptibly, more attentive, a shade more respectful. "One moment, please," she said. "I'll let his office know you're here." His office. Even his presence in a hotel-generated orbit. Ana waited in the lobby's soft chairs, fingers knitting and unknitting in her lap. A businessman nearby murmured into his phone in a language she didn't recognize. A housekeeper pushed a cart past, glancing at Ana with the faint knowing look of someone used to being invisible in rooms full of power. An elevator chimed. A younger man in a dark suit approached. No cane, no hat, just tidy hair, a tablet under his arm, and the slightly over-alert eyes of an assistant who lived on other people's schedules. "Miss Herrera?" he asked. "Yes, Mr. is expecting you," he said. "If you'll follow me." The elevator ride was quiet, the numbers climbing quickly. Ana watched the floor count rise and told herself that every level was just concrete and wiring, not some ladder of worth she hadn't been invited to climb. On the top floor, the assistant led her down a carpeted hallway lined with heavy doors. He stopped at the last one. "He's inside," he said. "Take your time." He knocked once, then opened the door for her. The suite was large but not ostentatious. Light poured in from floor-to-ceiling windows spilling across a sitting area, a desk, a small table with untouched breakfast. The man in the gold waistcoat was there, but without the waistcoat. Just a white shirt, sleeves rolled to the forearms, the cane leaning against the arm of a chair. The hat was nowhere in sight. He looked older here. "Miss Herrera," he said, standing. She stepped inside. The door shut softly behind her. "Thank you for coming," he added. "I'm not here to thank you," she said before she could stop herself. "Not yet." Something like amusement, soft, almost proud, touched his mouth. "Good," he replied. "Sit if you like." Ana chose the chair opposite his, back straight, hands on her knees. The letter was in her bag, close enough to touch. "I read it," she said. "He didn't have to ask what." And he trusted you more than I'm comfortable with," she answered. "But he also knew exactly who you were. That helps." Silence settled between them. Not heavy, just deliberate. "I'm not here to ask what you want from me," she continued. "You already told me. I'm here to tell you what I will and won't accept." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "I'm listening." "First," she said, steady, "the trust. You remove every barrier, no extra conditions, no quiet clauses about how I have to work for you to access it. It's compensation, not a leash." "Agreed," he said without hesitation. "Legal will prepare papers today. You'll sign when you're ready. Second," she went on, "if I take your offer for education and work, it's because I choose it, not because I'm grateful. Not because I feel I owe you my life. You don't get to use me as a story for investors or marketing. No photos, no speeches about the girl from the checkout line. My life isn't your redemption arc. This time something in his expression actually shifted, a muscle near his jaw tightening as if she'd struck closer to bone than he liked. Also agreed, he said. No publicity. If anyone hears about you, it will be because of the work you do, not because of how we met. Third, Anna said, if I step into your world, I'm not doing it only for me. You change things down there too. At the stores. You don't get to fix my life and leave everyone else under people like Daniels. How far are you imagining? He asked, curious, not dismissive. Start small, she said. Real names on badges. No more we printed it wrong. Live with it. Real training, not just videos. A rule, written, enforced, that supervisors don't get to humiliate people in front of customers. And when workers file complaints, they don't disappear into a drawer. They go somewhere someone like me can see them. He watched her, eyes thoughtful. You want a worker's eye in management? He summarized. And a worker's voice, she said. Not just mine. Eventually, people from stores sit in your meetings. Not as decoration. With power to vote no. He leaned back, studying the ceiling for a moment as if assembling a structure in his mind. Some of that will take time, he said. Contracts. Boards. Unlearning. But yes, he looked at her again. If you decide to work with us, I can build that into your role. A program that starts with 1 store, then 5, then 50. If it works. And if I don't work with you, she asked, then I still fix the trust, he said. And I still change the store you're in. Leslie will be promoted. There'll be an audit of every branch like this one. I can't promise perfection. I can promise progress. And more eyes watching men like Daniels. Anna let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You're taking this awfully well, she said. Me coming in here and making demands. He almost smiled. Your father told me you'd be trouble if I ever found you, he said. His exact words were, she's stubborn. That's her best quality. Don't break it. A laugh escaped her, short and wet, surprising them both. I thought he only said that to me, she murmured. He said a lot more than you realize, the man replied. About you. About what he wanted for you. Anna looked out the window for a moment. The city below crawled with tiny cars, tiny people, each carrying their own invisible ledger of debts and promises. I'm scared, she admitted quietly, of saying yes, of saying no, of wasting this, of becoming something I don't recognize. Good, he said softly. People who aren't afraid of power shouldn't have it. She turned back to him. I'll take the money, she said. That part isn't a question. My mother needs it. I need it. Done, he said. And I'll take the classes, she added, pulse quickening. I want to learn how the decisions are made. I want to be in the room. I want to be able to argue with you in your own language. He nodded once, slow, like someone watching a piece slide into place on a board he'd been studying for years. But, she said, lifting a finger, I keep 1 shift a week at the store. Maybe not forever, but for now. I won't forget what it feels like to stand behind that register. You're planning to be difficult, he observed. I'm planning to be honest, she replied. He reached for his pen. Then let's formalize your honesty. They spent the next hour going through details. He called his legal team. She insisted they email everything so she could read it twice. He suggested business courses. She added labor law and community organizing. He talked about pilot programs. She underlined phrases like worker council and non-retaliation and insisted they be more than slogans. At one point, he pushed a slim metal card across the table. This is my direct line, he said. If anyone tries to use you as a prop or punish you for speaking, you call. No assistant. No filter. She picked up the card. It was heavier than it looked. Careful, she said. My father warned you I'm stubborn. You might regret making it this easy. If I do, he said, it means you're doing your job. When she finally stood to leave, the sky outside had brightened. The rain had eased into a soft mist, turning the city's edges slightly blurred. He rose with her. Thank you for coming, he said again, not as a favor to me, as a favor to yourself. Anna held his gaze. For the first time, she didn't see only guilt in his eyes. She saw fatigue, resolve, and something like relief. "Thank you," she said, "for keeping the promise. Late isn't never." He inclined his head. "Ana Lucia," he said, pronouncing each syllable with care. "I look forward to working for you." She blinked. "You mean with me?" "No," he said quietly. "I meant what I said." She left the room with the letter in her bag, the future in her inbox, and his card in her pocket. Weeks later at checkout lane 3, a customer glanced at her chest and smiled politely. "Thank you, Ana," the woman said, reading the badge. The little rectangle of plastic shone under the lights. Ana Lucia Herrera, customer service and training behind her. Leslie was arguing, calmly but firmly, with a district rep about new anti-humiliation policies. Diego was showing a new hire how to override a price without panicking. On the break room table lay a flyer. Employee council meeting. All welcome. The system wasn't fixed. Not yet. But the door her father had asked for? She had walked through it. And this time, as she scanned an item and the register beeped its familiar, steady note, Ana didn't feel invisible. She felt exactly where she was supposed to be. On the floor, in the meetings, and in a story she was finally writing for herself.